Tonight we have a special segment on the drug problem happening in the city of High Point.
Triad News 360 reporters Paris Dunford and Ashley-Brooke join us live with a closer look at the crisis that is wrecking families across America. Paris, Ashley-Brooke.
Opioid addiction is sweeping the country and leaving wrecked families in its wake.
Law enforcement has all it can handle, but there's no way they're giving up anytime soon. I spoke with the people who put on the uniforms and they take up the fight. It's going through a crisis. The opioid epidemic is something that is impacting states and counties all over our country. 316 overdoses were recorded in the High Point area last year in 2017. Here I am standing in front of Caring Services, which is a recovery program for people who are wishing to change their lifestyles. I'm Ashley-Brooke reporting for Triad News 360. From 1999 to 2016, more than 12,000 North Carolinians died from opioid-related overdoses.
This crisis began as prescription drugs were prescribed at higher doses and more often, which led to an epidemic ending in heroin addicts.
This issue is devastating families and breaking communities.
High Point is one of the North Carolina cities that is truly struggling.
Deputy Dylan Wiesner discusses his experience from a law enforcement standpoint working for High Point Police Department.
I mean, obviously it puts a strain on us and on the public in High Point because they find needles laying on the side of the road. A kid can pick it up and stick himself with a used needle. And it obviously takes resources for us because we're having to respond to these calls and help people that are overdosing on heroin.
Wiesner explains that pain medication and heroin does not discriminate.
It's pretty bad everywhere right now, but it comes in waves. Like we'll get a couple months where we work a bunch of overdoses and then we won't get any for a while. And then another batch will come out where it's got a lot of fentanyl or what have you in it, and it gets worse and people are overdosing again. So it really doesn't have an age that people pick. Really all ages. I've worked some for people 16, 17, 18 years old all the way up in their 50s and 60s.
High Point Police Department's goal is to find the source that is distributing to these addicts.
I think the biggest thing is for us to be able to find the people that are selling it and distributing it inside High Point and getting rid of them, because I know High Point's a big hub for heroin trade, so that it goes to Thomasville, Greensboro, Winston, all the surrounding cities, and a lot of them come back to High Point. From 1999 to 2016, more than 12,000 North Carolinians died from opioid-related overdoses, according to the North Carolina Health and Human Services.
This crisis began as prescription drugs were prescribed at higher doses and more often, which led to an epidemic ending with heroin addicts.
High Point is one of these North Carolinian cities that is just truly struggling.
High Point is actually considered the heroin capital of North Carolina, according to High Point Deputy Shannon Payne, with 316 opioid-related deaths in 2017 and 51 already in the year of 2018.
The majority of these people abusing these types of drugs are actually white females and males, and this demographic of people make up for 300 deaths out of the 316.
The most devastating factor is that some children were present to witness these overdoses that resulted in death. 22 out of the 316 of deaths were seen by children.
This epidemic is also making our streets even more unsafe, with 14 traffic incidents in 2017 involving people overdosing at the wheel. The opioid epidemic is not only causing problems for law enforcement, but it is devastating families and communities.
Triad News 360 has a story on one family that was ruined by addiction. Morgan Goldstein is an average 20-year-old living away at college. Her family life, however, isn't so average.
My mother is a drug addict and she has been abusing painkillers since I was in 5th grade about.
Goldstein's mother's addiction started by using her children's medications.
Her drug addiction essentially split up my parents. My mom cheated on my dad and my parents are now divorced. So it has completely torn apart my family.
Goldstein believes that people need to be more cautious when it comes to drugs.
The drugs started with my brother. Actually, my younger brother is severely ADHD and he is prescribed Adderall and Concerta. And my dad noticed he was doing really bad in school, and my dad checked his pills one day and they were all gone, and he hadn't been taking pills for the last 6 months. My mom was taking them.
Goldstein believes that people need to be more cautious when it comes to drugs.
Something that people really need to be aware about, and how I don't think people understand how hereditary it really is. I know, I always watch myself.
Morgan hasn't talked to her mom in over 2 years, but her mother's addiction has really brought her brothers and dad to be closer than ever. I'm Paris Dunford, reporting for Triad News 360. Morgan's mother has been 2 years clean, but the damage her addiction has caused to her and her daughter's relationship cannot be repaired.
Morgan mentioned that her mom would go away for months at a time to rehab, which caused her to be absent from her children's younger years.
Organizations like Caring Services and High Point are trying to give these citizens the help that they need. Teresa Hinkle, the Program Development Director at Caring Services, explained to Triad News 360 how the organization is a 2-year program for low-income to no-income addicts. They do not accept any form of health insurance, and they are the only organization in High Point that provides housing for the program. Hinkle says that a majority of the people they receive as patients started abusing prescription medications from their wisdom teeth surgery or a high school sports injury.
Hickory, North Carolina was recently named 5th in the country when it comes to opioid use.
Alex Paspa, a Hickory native and filmmaker, has experienced the impact opioids can cause firsthand. Triad News 360 reporter Kevin McMahon found that Paspa decided enough was enough and wanted to create change.
More Americans died last year from drugs than they did in the Vietnam War. Why is no one talking about this? Why are we not hearing more about this epidemic? Young filmmaker Alex Paspa is using his platform to create open dialogue and conversation about America's drug problem.
The biggest inspiration for Malefica is the rising opioid-related overdoses and deaths that are going on in the country. I've had personal friends very dear to me pass away, including our beloved Jake Mead, who was a big operator on this film. He flew out to work on the movie with me, and during the process of making the movie, he overdosed, and it's very ironic because the movie is about drug addiction.
Malefica has won several awards, including the Los Angeles Film Award for Best Director and Best Fantasy.
The film is already bringing the topic of drug abuse in America to the forefront.
In my interview with Deputy Dylan Wiesner, he told me that these entities, such as government, law enforcement, and rehab centers, need to work together to help end this problem.
According to North Carolina Health and Human Services, they are working on connecting people to preventive health care, substance use disorder treatment, and community support.
To combat this issue, North Carolina government came up with the North Carolina Opioid Action Plan that begins in 2017 and will end in 2021.
And some of those strategies in the plan include reducing the oversupply of prescription opioids and reducing the diversion of prescription drugs and the flow of illicit drugs.
The government is also looking to the community for their help. The plan also includes increasing community awareness and prevention and making naloxone, the combat drug with opioids, widely available.
Throughout the action plan, they will be measuring the effectiveness of these strategies based on results. This plan is considered a living document, and changes can be made as the government monitors those results.
So hopefully this crisis can be combated as community partners work together. Thank you for joining us for this special segment on the opioid epidemic. I'm Ashley-Brooke Daniels.
And I'm Paris Dunford. Back to you, Isabella. Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley-Brooke and Paris, for the in-depth look at the opioid crisis in our neighborhoods.